All right, good evening, everyone. I'm excited to kick off our second panel of the evening. My name is Akash Magoon. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO at Adonis. But the second panel is not about me. It's about our three esteemed guests. The topic of our second panel tonight is finding the balance between two things in healthcare that have always been at odds of one another: mission and margin. Every single one of our executives up here today are running companies that are ultimately on a mission. But at the end of the day, they're also businesses that need to achieve scale, growth, and margin. And I'm personally excited about learning from the three of them around how they thought about balancing these three things within their organizations. First up, we have Dr. Mark Kozlowski from Denver. Mark is the CEO of CarePoint Health. And from my knowledge, Mark is the only medical doctor of both of our panels tonight. So Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Please tell us about your journey as both a medical doctor and going from medical doctor into running one of the largest medical services organizations in the country in the hospital space.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me. Again, my name is Mark Kozlowski. I'll give you like a 2-second background so you know where I'm coming from. I started with an interest in business in undergrad, and then I think I watched too many runs of ER and transitioned into medicine. And I've had a 25-year run taking care of patients in emergency departments. CarePoint is a privately held, or a little bit of a kind of strange setup. We're 100% privately owned group, so we have 300 equal owners. We're all hospital based, so we don't own any clinics. We're all operating at about 42 different emergency departments. And we've grown over the years and see about 1.3 million patients across primarily places that you can ski. So we're in Montana, Idaho, Utah, and Colorado. Yeah. It makes it a little easier to recruit. So, so that's a little bit about CarePoint. We're primarily emergency physicians. We have some neurologists. We have a couple neurosurgeons who prove difficult to manage, but primarily emergency physicians and hospitalists and neurologists. So, yeah, CarePoint's grown quite a bit over the last few years, and we're about 10x of where we started. And the unique part of being hospital-based is one part, and we're really dependent on the hospital in terms of information, RCM, and we'll get into that in a bit.
Sure. Hey, can you tell us a little bit about the scale of CarePoint?
Yeah, so we do the emergency medicine, as I mentioned. We also do telehealth. So during COVID, we grew a lot into telehealth. We do about 100,000 telehealth encounters a year. We're in about 30 states. Doing telehealth. That part of the business is growing really rapidly, much like a tech startup.
Great.
But core business is emergency medicine and seeing patients in the emergency department.
Thank you. And one detail that you mentioned is that CarePoint is 100% privately owned, but the one nuance there that you didn't mention is it's also 100% provider owned. Tell us what that means for your business.
Yeah, it means I've got 300 docs who I'm accountable to, all with their own priority, all who think they know the right way to run the business. You may know some of the hospital-based specialties like emergency medicine and radiology went through kind of a private equity roll-up phase about a decade ago, and it's kind of swept across the country with varying degrees of success. Our board made a decision. They did not want to go in that direction. I think the docs that were closer to retirement might have wished they went that direction, but we ultimately decided to stay independent, and we're one of the largest privately held physician practices.
Thank you. Our second panel speaker for the evening here is Devin Patel. Devin is the CEO of InfoCare RX. I mentioned that Mark is the only medical doctor on the panel. Devin's actually a Juris Doctor, aka a lawyer, and studied law at Rutgers. Devin, I'm curious to learn more about how you went from studying law to now running one of the country's largest infusion businesses.
Thanks for having me. It's actually a really interesting question, but I'm going to give you, just like Mark, maybe a 2-second high level. InfuCare is a specialty infusion provider nationwide, specialized for chronic care conditions. So in essence, we provide both pharmacy and nursing services. I started out as a technician, actually a summer intern for a company called Praxair. Most of you have heard of it. It's an air gas company. And over the years, I left, started a company with someone who was a manager there. We sold it to, ultimately sold it and got rolled over into a company called Solio now, which is owned by HIG Capital. And 2013, in between, I finished law school and figured I know something. Let's just continue with what I know. I really don't need to go and practice law right now. So started InfuCare in 2014, and in about 9 years or 10 years, we'll probably become one of the largest specialty infusion providers. We recapped the company with One Equity Partners in 2021. And just like Mark, I think we're probably 10x of what we used to be. Probably close to about 500,000 infusions per year, with close to about 800 employees.
Thank you. You mentioned that you're a private equity driven business, whereas Mark is a privately owned business by his employees. What does private equity mean for a business like yours?
That's a great question, Akash, because at the time when I decided, is it really time to go? And there's a natural process in founder-owned businesses. You go to, you build a really good brand, a brand that captures certain markets, and then you come to realization that now you have a big business, but it needs to be scaled up. So either A, you're going to organically continue to grow, or B, you're going to start thinking about inorganic acquisition mode. And to support the acquisition mode, we went through a very small, limited process. Shortly after COVID, part of the reason, was strategic for that reason is, and partnered with One Equity Partners, who's actually really good it's more of a third-party M&A firm, so to speak, that just is more interested in acquisitions and building bigger businesses. So I think this was in terms of private equity definition. I think we found a partner that matches our vision and mission for the company.
Thank you. And lastly, we have Andrew McAvoy from Pittsburgh. Andrew is the executive director of mid-market healthcare banking at JP Morgan. And I think Andrew brings a really unique perspective to our panel in that he supports different types of healthcare businesses across care delivery, technology, and digital health. Andrew, tell us more about your focus at JP Morgan and what you do for the clients that you support.
Yeah, thank you. And you didn't mention anything about doctors, so I don't play one on TV. I actually studied to be a doctor in my medical residency, passed out in 6 of the first 7 surgeries I was in. So gave business a shot. But yeah, as you said, Akash,
I'm here if you need me.
I could pass out right now. No, but I have a great vantage point from a banking perspective to be covering both care delivery groups as well as health technology, innovative tech-enabled solutions out there to really solve the needs of the inefficiency that healthcare providers face, right? Like the first panel was talking about all of the opportunity for improvement within healthcare, which has been slow moving. And so covering both of those client types is really, really impactful to bring value to both of those portfolios that we have. How we're helpful, we sit in the commercial bank. Lauren, who was on the first panel, is my boss. I thought did a terrific job on the first panel. But how we're helpful in the commercial bank is providing advice, capital, and just basic cash management solutions. So from a revenue cycle perspective, we have reconciliation tools, merchant processing, electronic billing, all of the simple things that many healthcare providers need, but haven't invested in just yet.
And as the market has ebbed and flowed over the last 5 or 6 years between low interest rates, high interest rates, a bull market, somewhat of a bear market, how has the advice that you've given your clients changed in that time period?
Yeah, it was said on the first panel. I got into healthcare about 4-ish years ago from a diversified role prior to that, and it was a bull market. It was growth at any cost, up and to the right, acquire, don't worry about synergizing, just get share. With the interest rate environment going up, that really, really 180'd, right? And so clients were focused on finding that efficiency, finding margin improvement. And, we had the 50 basis point cut yesterday. This is a slow moving tanker though, and the market will not just whipsaw back. I think that was very healthy for the overall industry to kind of digest, take a breath, focus on the core strategy of these particular care delivery groups. And I think also, the rate environment going back down will also be the catalyst to more and more investment, which is equally as important.
Thank you. Mark and Devin, both of your businesses have grown both organically, but also through M&A. I'm curious to maybe start with you, Devin, how M&A has helped grow your business over the past several years and how you think about that strategy in this market.
It's a really good question because
I got a whole bank of them.
I see the cards. Because the very purpose of bringing in a private equity firm is to support the growth at the inorganic M&A level. So for the past about 2 years, we've been on the buy side and we've been evaluating true infusion assets that fit our platform. And so it's with the intent to scale up the platform in different markets that we're either a little bit weak or are looking to grow into those markets.
This is your captain speaking. We need a provider on row 13, please. Never mind.
I told you I'm ready.
Yeah. Mark, curious about how you guys have thought about M&A throughout the growth of your business and how you institute that into the culture of your company.
Yeah, the ER market is a little bit unique. As I mentioned, it went through a time of kind of rapid acquisition. There was Team Health and Envision, which was KKR backed, and US Acute Care, which was backed by Welsh Carson, kind of took over the whole country. And then interest rates changed, and the government rules about balanced billing changed, which dramatically kind of turned their business model upside down, and in some cases resulted in bankruptcy. So we took, again, a little bit of different tact. We have not acquired. We have had mergers and groups that come to join us, but have purposefully not been purchasing practices, have been growing more organically and through our mergers of like-minded physician groups.
And Devin?
Yeah, so in terms of the culture, there are probably, in terms of the number of bids that we put out there, one of the first things that I always look for is the seller and their executive team and understanding what type of culture is within that target asset. It makes a huge difference when you're walking in the room and you have individuals on the other side that understand culture and can fit in and integrate well, and the synergies are there. But when you really get to that level and you feel uncomfortable, there are instances where we've actually passed on assets just because we felt that this wasn't a good fit for us, especially because of various different reasons, including culture.
Andrew, I mentioned at the beginning that you bring a really interesting perspective to our discussion today as a director and manager that services not only provider groups, but also technology businesses. Over the past few years, how have you helped advise your companies in terms of the latest and greatest technologies and how your care delivery businesses can use that to drive more operational workflows, more automation, and better margin?
Yeah, I think the first question is, what's the core strategy, right? So Devin just mentioned, an acquisitive platform, private equity-backed roll-up, which is much more common. I think important for that strategy to work is to have efficiency in the platform itself, right? And so investing in the tools, resources, platforms, systems, and technologies that you would need to grow at scale, to be acquisitive, rinse and repeat. So the advice that we often provide to our client base is to really focus on what the largest need is within that particular group. If you are a heavy cash pay payer mix, you should certainly invest in card processing solutions, omni-channel payments, electronic billing, all of those sorts of things to deliver a good patient experience. If you are in a high acuity space, I would say focus on technology investments in the documentation space. So you make sure you scrub the EMR for all the CPT codes you can and get paid for the care you are delivering. So those are the sorts of things that we're talking to our customers about. Beyond what Devin had just said about the acquisitive structure, another growth mechanism is just de novo organic growth. My own perspective, and I'm not an operator, but I feel like that's much easier because you control your own destiny. You are not acquiring businesses with different practice management systems, different RCM providers, et cetera. So it's a case-by-case basis, but that's how we take the consultative type approach with our healthcare clients.
And Devin, we earlier were discussing around the technology roadmap at InfoCare. I'm curious if you could tell us about how you thought about technology in the past and where it's going within your business over the next couple of years.
So for most of us, probably in this room, I think at one point or another, if you're running a company, you got to ask the question to yourself, what's the junction? I mean, in fact, I think I was asking Margie the question earlier because I had to face that question myself, and I wanted to know, for an organization of your size, when do you pull that trigger? And for most of us, I think technology is become, when you found a business and you started growing it and you come to a realization that it's growing, but you're growing based on systems that are off-the-shelf products. You then realize that you have multiple different products that you're using for multiple different SOPs and workflows, and they're not talking to each other. There's a lot of inefficiencies across the board, operational mumbo jumbo that happens. The financial guys are going, the inaccuracies that are probably building up in all kinds of reports and metrics. So at one point, and Akash, I think we talked about this a little bit more because I wanted to share this with everyone, is one point I came to in 2021, shortly after one equity partner was recapped in the business. I took up on the challenge and I said, we're going to use technology as an accelerator to go from good to great, but we're going to have to do this so that we're doing a bottoms-up approach. So the first thing I did is went out and recruited heavily. I mean, we probably interviewed multiple different types of people, but we ended up finding the right guy to come in as our CTO. And the first thing in the first 3 months of the project was deconstruction, understanding what we have today. So deconstructed the entire back-end operations and the systems, and then building on it, step-by-step foundation about what tomorrow looks like. So we wanted to get uber good in terms of digital presentation. In the industry that we're in today, specialty infusion, most of our competitors are still using the same type of products that we're using today, even though they may be vertically owned by payers. They're still using the same products. So then we took up on the challenge to build it in-house, which we've been doing really good with. Technology innovation was to become a part of our mission. And then about a year ago came this whole ML AI infusion across the board. So then we went back to the drawing boards and said, okay, great. So now we're building this thing from ground up, probably about a team of about 50 engineers, a dozen of them which we recruited last year that are specific to ML and AI, that are just sitting there looking at all of our operational SOPs and figuring out how to put in RPAs, robotic process automations, throughout different departments and SOPs to help reduce wastage, optimize staffing, use resources from one department to the other. For example, document processing, I think somebody talked about that earlier. We have thousands of faxes that are coming in, reports that are coming in, and we had manual assignment that was taking place by individuals. I mean, you can see how somebody's got to open up the document, the PDF, go through it, assign it to the proper file, proper patient profile. So we botted it. We put a RPA in place. We put a bot, which is actually 100% accurate. And these are the type of things that we've looked at. And the last 6 months has been pretty much all geared on ML and AI. So what we then did is we took the underlying data. I think, Margie, you talked about this, years and years of data. So we took everything that we have and we dumped it into a data lake. And that data lake is now sits right below the ML and AI algorithms in the engine, so that can support all kinds of activity that you're looking for on the front end. So that's pretty much how we see it in terms of how technology can help us support the growth, because the current products and the systems that we're using were actually a limitation to our growth. We just couldn't use that to grow the way we wanted to grow.
Mark, one of the things that we were really intrigued by when Doug and I first spoke to you was that we work with a number of emergency medicine businesses throughout the country, and a lot of them lag behind from a technology perspective. And we were surprised and pleasantly that you had mentioned a lot of the things that your team has been working on, whether it's AI-driven coding or ambient scribes, and a few other things. Tell us about what it took to prioritize technology and how you find time to spend on technology, given all the other things that you work on.
Yeah, again, I've mentioned a few unique things about emergency medicine, but one unique thing is 2/3 of the patients are either pay next to nothing or kind of the government rate. And we really rely on that 1/3 of patients that have commercial insurance to pay the bills. So if that percentage changes a little bit, or if we can get a few more dollars out of those commercial patients, it really is a difference between profitability and the business falling apart. ERs are required to see everybody who comes in, and you might have 20% that are going to pay nothing. So it's challenging. So yeah, we've used technology in a number of ways. We've used technology because we've invested in the revenue cycle, and I think that's really required to be successful, to have technology and a team that's analyzing the RCM process on a really regular basis. During my 20 years, the billing and coding fees went from like 11 to 12% to 2%, but the denial rate went up at the same rate. So even though we were paying a lot less to outsource a billing entity, many times the dollars were not coming in because they were simply going through claims real quickly and processing things that they could process for first pass without much effort. So we've invested time in kind of going back through claims and making sure we're getting paid appropriately. You mentioned AI, and one of the interesting things we've implemented this year is kind of put AI on the upstream. I mean, like immediately during the visit, using ambient AI to listen to the visit, to listen to the interaction, and try to give the physician some feedback as to are there opportunities when they're creating that chart to ensure that they get paid for the work that they do. So that upstream work with a startup called Clio has been real helpful in helping us maintain our revenue.
Many of the folks in the audience and also on the live stream are ultimately revenue cycle nerds. Curious why the revenue cycle challenge in emergency medicine is so unique from your perspective, and maybe you can give the audience a high-level view on how revenue cycle at large works and how your business gets paid.
Yeah, so it really starts with the government mandate, which is really the right thing to do. That if a person has an emergency, we take care of them, no questions asked. You can show up in an emergency room tonight and say, "I have no intention of ever paying you," and we say, "No problem, come on in." Well, that's kind of our mission, and it is a really unique part of medicine. But it presents a lot of challenges.
For sure.
So, and those docs when it comes time to create a mission statement, they don't mention getting paid, but believe me, they all want to get paid. It really highlights the way you have to focus on the commercial payers. And we're dependent. Another unique thing, we're dependent on the hospital for demographics. So many times we have, lots of John Does. We have lots of patients with the same address. That's the homeless shelter. Lots of patients that come in unconscious. There are a number of unique challenges in just getting the, patient's name, more or less the patient insurance, and having tools to scrub that data, make sure you find the right person, make sure you search databases for payment information, for insurance information, making sure you're billing them at the right address, using texting. All these items have been essential in us maintaining a viable business.
Yeah, one of the things that recently happened from a regulation standpoint was in the old days, if there was a patient who got in a car accident and wasn't actually conscious and was taken to a local hospital that was out of network for them, they'd be fronted with a pretty large bill, but they ultimately weren't conscious to actually decide what hospital to go to and figure out if they were in network. And now there's regulations in place where they would be exempt from a lot of the bills, which makes it a lot harder to run an emergency medicine business, but a little better for the patient ultimately. Devin, I'm curious. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, the out of network billing is or ban on out of network billing is unique as well. It presents real challenges if we're negotiating with a payer, because the payer ultimately we're required to see the patient, and ultimately we can't balance bills. So if the patient, if we send the patient a bill for $1,000 and the payer is only willing to give us a contract to pay 100, in 5 or more years ago, people were sending that balance bill directly to the patient, and that's been banned as well. So it really changed the economics of the business.
Andrew, as a business, JP Morgan has a lot of different inroads to revenue cycle, whether it's through a business that you own, which is InstaMed, that helps automate a lot of the patient collections, or Waystar, which is the clearinghouse that your team took public, or like a business like ours on the denial side. What have you seen across like the different types of care delivery business that you work with in terms of really helping them think about forecasting cash flows and helping them run a business that is actually profitable and sustainable?
That's a big question. Yeah, so we have cash forecasting tools built into our treasury workstation that we offer our clients. We offering all of those solutions and partnering with others on particular product needs gives us full visibility into the collection process to help forecast, which is imperative to run a sustainable, financially sustainable healthcare operation. And I think that's what wasn't said before as far as like the mission of healthcare providers. It's threefold. How could you not be inspired with Mark's kind of delivery of care for everyone, right? The goal of healthcare providers is to deliver compassionate, high quality care. They also want to enhance the patient experience, but they also, and equally as important, need to have a viable, financially sustainable model. So we work with clients to maximize collections, to improve their days in AR, to improve their collection rate, to make that a sustainable operation in the future.
And Devin, anything to add about the nuances of revenue cycle within the infusion business?
I mean, similar to Mark and other businesses, I think the traditional RCM functions are pretty much identical, except that as an infusion provider, we're providing both nursing and pharmacy services. So we're billing for the drug that's being delivered as well as the nursing services that are being rendered. And our site of care, 95% of our business for site of care purposes is home. So we're providing the services at home. So in terms of the RCM functions, it's pretty much identical to pre-auth and taking that all the way up to claims management, denials, and then ultimately collections. And we've looked at RCM optimization with ML and AI the same way that Mark and other guys have looked at is what do we do? Well, the first thing we want to do is start at the front end. Can we fix the pre-auth with some sort of an AI-driven mechanism, and then build off of that to avoid anything that's going to be the denial, the claims denial, which, because we're on the pharmacy and the nursing pharmacy and the medical side, the pharmacy benefits tend to be quicker in terms of reimbursement collection rates and the number of days, but it's the commercial payers that are a little bit of a challenge because it's still manual and it's still going adjudicated on certain platforms.
Thank you. Mark and Devin, both of you as prospective CEOs of your businesses, you ultimately have a pretty large leadership figure in front of the business and have a mission to kind of push down throughout different levels of the organization that you run. How do you think about pushing and encouraging your employees to think about margin and pushing margin while also thinking about the scale of the business, the margin, and ultimately running a business that needs to continue growing?
You want to take it? Why don't you take it, Mark?
I think ultimately the docs are focused on their mission, and their mission is take great care of patients. And from the corporate side, our mission is really simple: take great care of the docs so they can take great care of the patients. So that keeps it pretty easy. My message to the corporate team is we need to get bigger in order to have the type of technology and skills and economies of scale to be successful. There are no more one hospital or emergency medicine practices anymore. The business is too complicated. The revenue cycle is too complicated. The recruiting, quality, AI, all the things are too complicated. So I emphasized to the team that we need to grow. We need to continue to get bigger every year in order to keep up with our clinical mission of taking great care of people.
Yeah. So Mark, actually, to that point, I think profitability and margin qualifiers. I think personally, I struggle with that concept within the company because I think it's a very short-term goal if you were to implement that type of strategy. And if you're looking for a successful business to grow in certain markets, all markets, you need a long-term vision and follow that vision. So having margins for us when we're looking at care management for drugs and nursing, 35% of the newer therapy management that's coming out in the market is primarily sub-Q and IV routes, which is what we're based off of. And the downward pressure from payers is growing, has been growing, and it continues to keep growing. So for us, we can no longer just have a qualifier of X% and say this is the only thing we're going to take, or build that within our as a culture or mission within our scaled platform. So it's more like anyone and everyone who's coming in the door, we're servicing those patients. But how do we manage that? Is we manage it on the back end with operational efficiencies. The theme for the company for 2024 has been operational efficiency. And how do we achieve efficiency and bring in wastage or optimize staffing? That's number one for us. The second thing that we've been able to do very successful, is push back against payers. If they're going to come down, I think Shilpa had mentioned something in the earlier panel, is you got contracts. When you're growing the company or building the company, it's contracts, build, grow, right? You're in that mode. So you got all these older contracts that are sitting, and you got all these fee schedules and J codes that are sitting on your books. But let's go ahead and start renegotiating those things. Let's go ahead and take a look at what's our best, most utilized drugs, and the ones that we don't care about. Let's go ahead and start negotiating on those and give them something, but then get a couple of points here and there that's going to help with our margins. And that's how we're starting to push back quite a bit, actually.
Thank you. We got a time check, so just a few minutes left. I wanted to end by sharing that I think each one of you have grown very quickly within your respective careers and industries, and continue to build, continue to scale, and continue to stay motivated within the businesses that you're running. I'm curious from each one of you, like, what really continues to fire you up about the work that you do, and why are you doing what you're doing now as opposed to any of the other things that you could be spending your time on? Maybe starting with Andrew.
Yeah, I would say, it's very energizing to help clients scale quickly, providing capital for capital investment, for acquisitions. I'm a firm believer in capitalism. And
what's that?
Forgot this was recorded. And so I find real value in what I do, Akash, in that I am raising the capital, helping businesses grow, to employ people, to bring commerce to communities that didn't previously have it. And that's my why. Specific to healthcare, JP Morgan is a great position to play from because it's our flagship vertical. We've made the investments in our own RCM solutions to help our clients. And then from a strategic perspective, it's very energizing and fun to be part of conversations of potentially taking clients public one day, to focus on the life-changing next liquidity event for founders and owners. And so to answer your question, I think that's what energizes me and what excites me.
I would say two words: intrinsic motivation. And I think for me, it's no longer about It's more about waking up every morning and becoming the first of its kind of AI-backed specialty infusion provider that pushes better care and quality of care than any other provider that's in the market. I mean, really, that's what it's come down to at this point.
Thank you. Mark, what keeps you fired up about emergency medicine and the work that CarePoint does?
Yeah, it's more what doesn't keep me fired up. So we've talked a lot about technology in RCM and how to keep our business running. But ultimately, I think tonight at 3 a.m. when I'm asleep, and hopefully we're all at home with our families, or many of you are home with your families. And there's, I've got 54 docs who are going to be working at 3 a.m. and they're going to be awake if people need it. So that keeps me motivated each day. We're lucky to care for 3,000 plus patients every day, and 4,000 patients on a busy day, and that just knowing that those docs are out there on Christmas at 3 a.m. caring for people, I think motivates me and my team to do their best every day.
Please join me in a round of applause for our speakers. We have some time for Q&A. So if anyone has any questions, we'll have a mic passed around to you.
A lot of revenue cycle is often building a better mousetrap. So it's innovating around the edges against, carrier and provider. So how, especially as, JP Morgan's position, how do y'all see yourselves as arbiter or even, market maker between, carrier and provider? We've made a lot of inroads in the population health space because incentives have been aligned to reduce cost. Not so much on the administrative side. So, how do y'all see yourselves playing a role in that, and perhaps better aligning incentives, or, helping us make, better connectivity on the administrative or RCM side, so we're not just kind of etching away at the margins?
Yeah, so as mentioned before, I'm a firm believer in efficient markets, and I feel like there will be investment into filling that need. We do not at all negotiate between providers and payers one bit, but to enable both parties to negotiate from a position of strength and providing those provider clients with the RCM tools to be most informed is something that we're focused on.
Yeah, I might add a little bit. I don't know if it doesn't sound like we have many payer representatives in the room, but we're in a all-out battle with payers. United Health is probably on the top of our list, and it is with most physician practices right now. And again, we're the balance of power kind of went back and forth, and there was some out-of-network billing and some practices that may not have been ideal 5 or 10 years ago, and now the balance has really shifted, at least in the markets that I serve, back to the payers, and we're just trying to get by and trying to keep being able to recruit and retain 50 people so they can do the night shift tonight.
United sure has a lot of enemies.
They do.
My question's for Mark and CarePoint. Kind of gets at a little bit your ownership structure. What we find at Adonis, we shed light on the RCM data and give really unparalleled transparency in a world where it previously hasn't been, obviously siloed in revenue cycle with some tangentially related departments getting insight into what's going on. We find that the providers we give this data to are very keenly interested in the performance of revenue cycle, and I can imagine your providers are even more so, given their owners in the business. So I'm just curious, any challenges you faced in keeping them informed and how revenue cycle is performing and the data being shared with them?
Yeah, you need to get data in front of them in multiple different methods to make sure it all sinks in. You're going to have a small percentage of docs who are looking at their billing every day, and you have a small percentage that are not looking at it at all. The vast number in between, we've got to, continue to provide feedback. We're trying to move from a kind of an old model, which was quarterly feedback or even monthly feedback, to providing, can we provide same day feedback, or in the instance we're talking about using AI upstream at the time of the visit, can we provide them, feedback during the visit to make sure that they're doing the right job and getting paid for the work that they do.
I'm going to add something to that. So on the same note, Mark, I think we're starting to do the same, which is, can we provide data, live data, infusion data, which the payers are looking for one way or the other, and then build data agreements within it. So though we have fee schedules for certain types of services that we provide, there's another set of data agreements that then is subject to this live data that's going to them. So we built in this portal, and we allow for payers to access this data directly, whether if it's outcomes data, H&P data, all kinds of other stuff that they're looking for, anything customizable that they want, we can pull that using these AI algorithms.
Hey, Devin. I was really interested and intrigued by your investment internally in the AI strategy, the data lake, the 10 ML AI engineers. How do you think about as a CEO, and how do you maybe delegate it out? But like, how do you think about calculating the ROI and what type of time span you're looking at to actually like realize the ROI?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good question, because I don't come from tech background. So this was a, I think for most of us in the leadership, it's what not to do is more important than what to do. So the one thing I didn't want to do is invest in and go in a rabbit hole and then come out at the end of the day knowing that we haven't gone any further than what we should be. So this is why we really brought in someone that truly understands the tech space, but more importantly, the specialty pharmacy and the infusion space, because they came from CVS and they were in charge of running their digital transformation strategies. But more importantly than that is taking and allocating certain types of resources and then giving them the liberty to build a platform that's going to cut down and create operational efficiencies across the board. So we have metrics that we use. We have all kinds of financial things that we take a look at and evaluate. Overall, our total dollars that are spent towards this, if we were to stay on the same path and not invest in it, we would be probably, in terms of using the third-party off-the-shelf products and the multiple different product subscriptions, the number of users, we'd probably almost 3/4 of the cost there anyways. So for us, it's now starting to figure out, that this is actually working really well for us.
If there are no other questions, we will bring this evening to a close. Please join me in giving another round of applause to our panelists. We want to extend a huge thank you to our partners, JP Morgan, for helping us put on this event. And thank you to you for joining us this evening and taking time out of your busy week to listen to the two panels and commune and network. But thank you again, and have a great rest of your evening. Safe ride home.